Hey, Chris McGoga Park here again. Using my bad mic again. Sorry about that. I found this particular multiplayer bug to be kind of funny and interesting. It's just one of those visually weird things that I thought was worth sharing. So you can see this. This is the galaxy map. It's going crazy on this particular um, multiplayer session, and this is simply because um, so we have a network sync repair um, process that happens over the course of a few seconds, generally speaking. Basically, for individual like units, like ships and buildings and whatnot, it goes through and it looks for things that are a little bit different, and if they're wrong, then it sends a fix. But for other stuff that is ostensibly a lot less data and can more frequently be wrong, it just goes ahead and just sends it every frame. Now, in the case of that, it does that for fleets, for planets, for factions, a few other things. That helps keep things in sync between the server and the client. Now, when I loaded up this particular save game, I'm running this off the host of my Mac computer, which is like an old 2013 Mac that's like not even at minimum specs for the game, but it runs beautifully, no problems. I'm not running it with the ship graphics on, but it's able to run at full sim speed. What's interesting is that on my like powerhouse development computer, which is what I use as the client, I intentionally put the weaker machine as the client just for testing purposes here. You can see that it is cycling through where it has these the performance drops dramatically, and on the host it's like waiting for client for a second. And I was noticing that happened to be when the planets and fleets. I'll show you in here. I was noticing that there's the fleet syncs, planet syncs, and world extra syncs kind of all ticking up at once. It was going like 96, 97, in the factions too. And it's supposed to be doing those. There's supposed to be a bit of a gap between each one, and there is, but it's not an enormous gap. It's I think it's either a tenth. I think it's a tenth of a second. So essentially, all of these numbers tick up so quickly that you can't tell the difference. So you'll notice that planet syncs look off at the moment because it's syncing more time. So what I introduced was what's called time slicing for that, which is to say, don't send all the planets, just send, I kind of arbitrarily chose a quarter of them at a time, send those over a few frames. And so you'll notice that's roughly 5 times as many syncs as the others. It's not exactly 5 times because when you divide by 4, there's sometimes a remainder, and so you get some bit of extras just because things don't divide evenly in integer math. So it's like somewhere between 4 and 5 times as many. And this cuts down the amount of data that's being sent dramatically. But this kind of confirmed my suspicion that something on the client was being really slow that doesn't exist on the server. And what it is, clearly, when I look at this, is something to do with the Galaxy Galaxy map linkages. So normally I wouldn't bother sending that data over again. But in the second, I mean, you never know what we're going to do in the future in general, or what a modder might want to do. So for one thing, it's good to just go ahead and make sure all that stuff stays consistent. But what's interesting is like in the second expansion that's coming up, we have the ability, for one, to destroy planets, and for two, to have planets like move around and have links change and so forth. So it needs to update. but it should do a better job of saying, hey, if it's the same, like, leave me alone, like, don't do anything. And it's not doing that right now. And what's really interesting because of this time slicing is you can actually see it is doing something actively wrong. I'm not sure what. I don't know what this is, but if you notice, and this is the client again, recall. So we're seeing these situations here where, like, this planet, which should be this Mark IV planet named Harrow, is occasionally having, I guess, everything wiped out on it. Yep, and it's causing this cascade of other issues with things not being able to find entries. It wasn't doing this before I introduced the time slicing, so it's possible that I have some sort of logic in the time slicing itself where it's like, oh, delete everything that's didn't get synced, but I don't think that's the case. So most likely it's just a case of several different pieces of code that were converging, all combining to make this particular error, but it makes for certainly a very visually distinctive one. That's probably what's been dragging down the performance recently. So I'll look into that more today, but I just thought it was a funny enough visual thing to show. So there we are.